Okay, so Skarner has new lore, apparently. I've not watched this video yet. I have seen some people on social media being decidedly mixed on it, and certainly, I mean, I'm sort of going into it with negative expectations. I think I'm not gonna like it very much, but that's because I have so much affection for what Skarner was. I liked that Skarner and like the origin of Hextech being something that was stolen from him and his people by murdering his people. I liked that complicated the whole shining technical utopia on a hill thing about Piltover. Is like, yeah, whatever technology they have, whatever inventions they make are derived from blood diamonds, like in very literal terms. That it sort of undercut their mythology of like self-made genius, kind of, oh, we are just because we're all so smart, when it's like, no, actually you stole the fundamental building parts of everything you built from other people, like that, because that interacted really well with the sort of class structure thing that was in Piltover and so on. All of that is gone now. Partly, my suspicion is that partly because it complicated things, because it meant that a character like Jace, a character like Victor, a character like Ezreal even, and indeed like Seraphine or Heimerdinger, especially poor Heimerdinger, none of them could ever be unproblematically heroic, because their powers, like their ability to do shit, maybe not Ezreal so much, but their ability to do shit, like their ability to be champions at all, was contingent on this like immoral technology, like this technology that was derived from deeply immoral sources, right? And because all of the powerful Hextech crystals, like the really powerful ones, the ones that actually power Jace's inventions and Seraphine's inventions and power Blitzcrank, I think also, because all of those were specifically pieces of the souls of the Brackern, there was that thorny question of like, hey, shouldn't they give those back? And in so doing, lose their powers? Like, wouldn't the moral thing to do be to give up your powers, give up your greatest inventions, give up these stolen artifacts and give them back? And that's a complication. I think that's an interesting complication. I think that's an interesting question to ask of a set of characters. But Riot didn't ever seem to be comfortable with it, or Riot never seemed to want to engage with those questions at all, and so Skarner has been removed from Piltover and so on, has been like thrown into Ishtal. He's been turned into their sort of isolationist, xenophobic, old sort of god/spiritual leader. And also he's a kaiju now. So like already I'm sort of coming into it negative. But like let's hear what they have to say about what they want to do with Skarner and where they want to take him. And let's see if like maybe there's an interesting direction there. Maybe there's some interesting stories that can be told about him eventually, about how he kills Melio, I guess, which he wants to do now. Or rather, I don't think he wants to kill Melio specifically, but he sees Melio as a threat and wouldn't hesitate to destroy him if he had to. So let's see, let's put subtitles on.
For a really long time, I've been wanting to write a horror-based character, and a lot of my characters...
Wait, horror-based? Hang on, wait. What do you mean horror-based? What? Okay, okay, maybe, like... Is Skarner gonna be a horror character? That would kind of rule, actually, if they took, like, an explicitly horror-based sort of... I don't know how they would, given how he... Oh, yeah, let's listen.
Cute, but I've also wanted to work on something kind of terrifying. So when we were looking at Skarner, we were like, yes, our time has come. We're going to write what we call Scorer, which is Skarner horror.
Okay. Okay, horror. I must confess, I did not get that at all from any part of his design or from any part of his voiceover. I guess, well, that sort of depends what you mean by horror, of course. Like existential horror, for example, is like this thing of seeing the world become unrecognizable to you, like being isolated from his people. Like there's lots of, you could probably do existential horror with Skarner.
Hi, I'm Elise Lemoyne. I'm a senior writer here at Riot Games on League of Legends, and I was the writer on Skarner's VGU. And today I'm here to talk about Skarner's lore and all the excitement that brings for Runeterra and League of Legends.
No,
Skarner's
but horror.
new lore is that he is a 10,000 plus year old Brackern and is the longest serving and founding member of Ishtal's ruling caste, the Yuntal. As the longest serving member, he has been a part of Ishtal's history and has been a part of every key decision leading up to the present, including the decision to sequester Ishtal from the rest of the world. He is determined to protect Ishtal at any cost.
Yes, all of that I got.
That he sees the world develop outside of Ishtal has just fueled this paranoia that may not be entirely reality. Skarner sees that mortals will do anything they can to grasp even a modicum of power, and that their penchants for violence is also incredibly high. He both loves humans and distrusts them, and he's hearing these whispers of ending Ishtal's isolation, and that's really driving his paranoia. What makes Skarner scary.
Okay, so the horror here is, I guess, supposed to be specifically that he has this, I guess, nascent trauma from what, from the coming of the Void and the end of Icathia, and the horrors that he's seen that humans will do, and the lengths that they will go in order to acquire power. He would also have seen the Rune Wars if he's 10,000 years old, right? And that has sort of fucked him up, and now he exists in this state of constant anxious paranoia about the outside world and the dangers that can come from there if it is allowed into Ishtal, if Ishtal opens itself up. Okay, I guess I see, I can see that as a horror angle. So, I thought, okay, what the hell is horror about Skarner as a character? It's oh, no, horror in terms of, the way that he is in the world, and the way that he sees himself, and, the way that he experiences the world is one of a genre of horror, of, he sees the world as this terrifying, dangerous, paranoia-inducing place that is full of terrors around every corner kind of thing. Okay, that makes some sense to me.
Isn't just that he's giant or that he can rip through the terrain. It is this paranoia, and that even the best intentions can become twisted. I hope that people kind of engaging with Skarner's story kind of feel the kind of visceral fear that comes from twisted good intentions, what it means to be in that position and to.
And this is where this is nothing to do with the writing, but it's those sounds like really cool concepts to engage. Boy, that sounds like a story I'd love to read. Love to see some stories about Skarner sort of engaging with that horror, with that fear, with that anxiety, and get into the way that he thinks and the way that he sees people around him, and the way that he sees the ghosts of catastrophe around every corner. Would love to read a story like that. I don't have a lot of confidence that I ever will, is the thing. I don't have a lot of confidence that Riot gives enough, at the company, the corporation gives enough of a shit to actually publish any of that. I just don't have the faith that they'll do that. I'm just gonna check the universe actually to see, has Skarner had an actual story put up here? Let's see. We have a bio, which is about a tweet and a half. There is a bio. Is there a short? There is not a short story. Okay. Okay. We'll read the short story after this. But yeah, that sounds cool. Writer person. It really genuinely does. I think that's a interesting idea for the character. I don't have any confidence that the interactions he has in-game can deliver horror in any meaningful way. They certainly didn't when I looked at them. There wasn't any horror there. What there was a paranoid tyrant enacting violence against people who don't deserve it because he's paranoid about losing his power. That's what came across in game. Because engaging with a concept like that sort of demands a form that isn't League of Legends, the video game, I suppose. And that sucks. That, and that's not the writer's fault, right? That's not really something they can control. But if you got, but it also, my criticism is that if you're gonna have a concept like that, a concept that requires getting into a character's head like that, And if you know that League of Legends, the video game, is not going to be delivering on that, if you know that Riot Games, the company, the corporation, is just not going to fucking give you the publishing space to explore that, which I have no confidence or faith that they will at all. None whatsoever. Not especially after the fucking 500 people that they fired and the contractions that are happening and how hard Riot has been scaling back on all narrative ambition in anything that isn't arcane. I have no confidence they will ever let you tell that story. And that's the point where, like, my criticism might be, maybe you should have considered going for something that could be communicated more effectively in the game then. Like, maybe this sort of high-concept psychological internal horror thing with Skarner, which is really interesting. I still prefer the old lore, but that sounds really interesting. Maybe you should have gone with a story that the game can actually support, rather than that. Because... And again, like, maybe the writer knows something I don't. Maybe Riot is about to announce a huge initiative of, like, novelizations, and they're going to outsource a bunch of the stories and restart Riot Forge. Like, maybe they're going to do something. Maybe something's going to happen. But I have no faith in it, and the MMO now is, like, another 5 years away because they restarted development of the damn thing. So, like where are we going to get that story? Like, wherever are we going to get to see that part of Skarner? Because it's not going to be in League of Legends. Again, none of that is the writer's fault. Like, they tried to create an interesting story about a compelling character. They may well have succeeded. It's just, in order for me to find out whether they succeeded, I would need to see more than what Riot seems willing to publish. So...
also be on the receiving end of a character like Skarner. The reason why we updated Skarner's lore is, with the goal of creating a single canon throughout all.
Okay, I made a whole fucking video on the main channel about that. I'm not gonna go off on another rant, but like, why is that the goal? Why? Who made that the goal? Oh my god. Again, my sympathy is with the writer here. Because, like, they did not ask to be saddled with that. But why is that the goal? Why would you do that? What's the point? What's the purpose? What's the benefit of that at all, except that some executive shitbag jackoff who wears sneakers to work and a suit jacket over a graphic tee was like, oh, well, actually, maybe this way we should have, like, one unified thing, buzzword. Like, because, like, no, I mean, I know how it works at Riot. They have some kind of data. Riot is a data-driven company, so someone had some kind of data that said that the players find it hard to know which thing is canon and which thing is not, and that's driving disengagement from the lore. Which is like, yeah, sorry, that's probably true on a technical level, but the fundamental problem, the difficulty people have with figuring out what's canon is that Riot wasn't communicating it! That's the problem with people being confused by what is canon and what isn't, is that Riot never communicated it. They never said shit. They never, ever specified canonicity for anything. They never did. They never communicated what we should expect. Because, like, when Legends of Runeterra was first published, right? Riot went on record and said, everything in Legends of Runeterra is totally canon, right? Like, that, they went on record and said that. Everything should be considered canon, part of the main universe, the whole thing. And we were all very excited by that. But that's really cool, because now the main universe of League of Legends is being expanded massively with all these cool characters and stories and locations. That was awesome. And then, like, without any explanation, any communication, any reaching out, any, like, blog post even about it, Legends of Runeterra started going a little bit kooky with it and started playing with alternate timelines. Like, there's 3 versions of Cythria running around, right? Like, that are all sort of mutually exclusive to one another, and messing with timelines and, like, creating these what-if scenarios. And that was all very cool. It was all very fun, but Riot never communicated about it. They never said anything about, like, oh, hey, this is like, people had to ask the writers on fucking twitter.com to clarify what any of this fucking means. Like, how should we expect to understand this? In what spirit should we take this? And Riot themselves, the company, didn't say shit. People had to ask the writers. Oh, shit. I clicked the button. People had to personally go and ask the writers to clarify how this works in canon. And the writers couldn't really give an answer on behalf of the whole company because clearly the fucking company didn't have a strategy. They didn't have guidelines. Clearly they didn't. Clearly the company had no fucking idea themselves whether anything was canon, because all the writers could say, all they were able to say was, well, think of it kind of like a what if scenario. Like, they couldn't specify or set in stone the canon because they didn't have the authority to do that because the company didn't have any fucking guidelines about it. So one individual writer couldn't just go on Twitter and declare what is canon or what isn't. That sort of thing needs to be decided in a fucking meeting with a whole bunch of stakeholders, and those stakeholders clearly never had that fucking meeting. And so when people were confused about the canon of League of Legends, that's not because, oh, things exist in more than one timeline sometimes. Well, people are morons who can't possibly hold these concepts in their heads. We must unify the entire canon. No! Just tell them! Just have some kind of idea internally. And part of it is this fucking corporate unwillingness to ever let go of a potentially monetizable asset thing, where it's like, oh, well, but if we declare this thing canon, maybe we lock ourselves out of doing X or Y or some other thing. Like, every time you declare something canon, every time you commit to any course or path, you lock yourself out of something in the future, right? There's always a fucking trade-off to that. Always. There's always a trade-off to that. And that's part of the thing. And Riot was never fucking willing to make the trade-off, ever. They were never willing to make the trade-off. They were never willing to commit to one path or to any one thing. The fucking Yordles they couldn't get together on. They couldn't get together on whether Yordles were fucking cryptids that no one in Runeterra knew about, no one ever encountered them, and they were like fairies hiding in plain sight with magic, or whether they were just normal creatures that just exist in Runeterra. They couldn't get together on that one fucking thing. They couldn't decide what part was canon, and so they just proceeded with some writers writing the Yordles as these like impossible cryptids that no one knows about, and some other writers, especially the ones on Legends of Runeterra, going, no, Yordles are normal, they're everywhere, everyone knows about Yordles, don't, like, what the fuck are we doing? And Riot never settled that canonicity question. That's why people were confused, you corporate piece of shit, garbage disposal, asshole, data-driven my ass. All they had to do was just clarify that shit. All they had to do was have some kind of internal consensus on what the fucking canon is, and then communicate it to the players, and people would have easily been able to understand the idea of multiple like, fucking Marvel Comics exists. They do it all the time. Even their fucking movies. Like, that is a thing which is eminently possible to do. Easy to do, even. But Riot didn't communicate. That was the fucking problem. Not that, oh, the canon isn't all unified, so I can't. And again, none of this is this writer's fault. I'm not yelling at this writer. I'm yelling at the corporation. I'm yelling at the company. They are trying to do the best work that they can under the circumstances that they're thrust into, and they have all of my fucking sympathy. Because I know that can't be fucking easy. Like, why should this person, this writer, be saddled with the job of cleaning up the mess that Riot, the company, made by being fucking incapable of communication? Deeply, desperately, just constitutionally, pathetically incapable of communicating their own lore and their own story and the rules of their own fucking universe to their own fucking player base. Like, god damn it. Anyway, that just set me off on a thing. It's so maddening. It's so infuriating because it's so insulting the way Riot treats this. Like, oh, yeah, we identified the problem. The problem was that there wasn't one unified canon. You couldn't, like, 10 years of being so incapable. You couldn't decide if Yordles were real. You couldn't decide if Yordles, like, you couldn't get together on that. And now you're going to tell me, you're going to sit there and in seriousness tell me, oh yeah, we're going to unify the whole canon of League of Legends. Go fuck yourself. No, you're not. This is going to fail so hard and so sadly. And so many people are going to pour so much fucking work into this doomed fucking project that's never going to resolve properly. Because you know what's going to happen? You know what's going to happen is you're going to spend 12 months and God knows how many work hours of your people's lives trying to make this thing work. Then it's going to turn out that it doesn't really work, and then no one's going to be able to take responsibility or blame for that, and then Riot is just going to continue to not communicate a fucking thing to the players, and we're all gonna sit here and notice, oh hey, it looks like you're already immediately starting to play with shit that clearly isn't canon and things that don't work with the canon, and it looks like you don't have a proper internal archiving system or any kind of fucking lore bible that defines what really is or isn't canon. The writers are just kind of left to their own devices to do whatever the fuck they want because they have no guidance. And oh my god, look, we're right back where the fuck we started, with players being confused about what is and isn't canon because you motherfuckers can't communicate it. I was supposed to be Skarner. I think I blacked out there for a second. Hi. Hello, my name is TBSkyen. Have I been recording a video, or was I just yelling into my room? I do that sometimes. Sorry. My apologies, writer person. You were trying to say something cogent and useful, and I just ended up screaming.
Canon throughout all of Runeterra, there leaves a lot of questions with the Brackern and Hextech and what that means. On a personal level, working on Skarner and knowing I'm changing so much, it's a little terrifying.
Yeah.
Because we want to place these champions like...
And I just... No one harass that writer on Twitter, please. Like, if you see someone being shitty to that writer on Twitter or on social media or whatever, like, talking about how the writer is stupid or incompetent or whatever, like, please shut them down. Please just tell them to shut the fuck up, right? Like, don't be friends with them, like, just because the writers are generally people who are just trying to do the best that they can with the mandates that they're given, right? They are told what the boundaries are of what they can do, and they do the damn best they can with the circumstances that they're left in. And those circumstances are often fucking impossible. So, like, nobody yell at the writer, please. Like, I know I've been yelling at... I was yelling a lot while there was a picture of the writer on screen. I wasn't yelling at them. I really genuinely wasn't. It's just the company that they work for is bad. And it would be, like, I have sympathy for that. It is terrifying. Like, when you're working on a champion like Skarner, when you're changing so much, when there's that fucking shitstorm with those fucking assholes who, like, just cannot fucking shut up. Like, it's so fucking tedious. I still get it in my comments. People are like, oh, they're changing Skarner to make Seraphine look good. It's like, no, the fuck they're not, dude. Come the fuck on. Like, the Seraphine thing was a visible symptom of it. Like, and again, that's a visible symptom of Riot's failure to communicate and failure to understand their own canon internally, is that clearly nobody was paying attention when they wrote Seraphine's story. No one was paying attention that, hey, maybe this voice line about helping Skarner hear the voices of his people while she's using a fragment of one of his people's souls, maybe that would come across as a little bit, you know, insensitive. And the reason why shit like that happens is because someone somewhere, like, because there wasn't someone whose job it was to be very consciously aware of all the, like, of all the details and the implications of the lore. There wasn't a feedback process that could tell the writers, oh, hey, you're kind of running into a landmine here. Like, that's a problem of process. Fundamentally, that's a problem of process, right? Like, that's a team-wide failure. It's not a failure of any one of the writers, but the idea that Riot is retconning this because they want Seraphine, like, oh, you want to make her look at, like, go fuck yourself. Like, that's such a conspiracy theory brained nonsense, and it comes from this irrational, psychotic hatred that people have developed towards Seraphine for no fucking good reason, except, of course, she's a girly female girl champion who's a girl, is, like, the main thing. Is like, oh my god. And I am so fucking... I hate that any part of what I made contributed to that, like, because I thought it was funny. I just thought it was funny that clearly there's been a failure in the feedback process here. It's like someone at Riot didn't think about the implications of what they were saying. Haha, that's quite amusing. And then it just spiraled into this fucking shitstorm. I tried so hard to pull back on it. I did an hour-long video breaking down her character design, talking about the problems with it, trying to deal with the fucking Brackern thing, and people just... I still get messages occasionally from people, like, sort of calling me as, like, a Seraphine hater or whatever. I think she's a really cool character who had a lot of unexplored potential that got lost because Riot were clearly so focused on selling her as part of KDA rather than, like, actually paying attention to her base Runeterra character and incarnation. But yeah, no, sure, Seraphine hater, that's me. Fuck you, Jesus Christ. Anyway, I have some grievances around this storyline. But no, yeah, like, it would be terrifying because there's so many people who still peddle that bullshit of like, you're just doing it to make Seraphine look good. And it's the dumbest shit. Like, no, the fuck they're not. That's like, they've been pretty clear about, like, they were uncomfortable with the whole Brackern storyline, the whole of it, as it relates to plenty of their champions. They, like, Riot itself was uncomfortable with the complexity and, like, the moral depth of the dilemma that they had presented for their own setting. That's not Seraphine, that's all of it. Right, so they try to unify the canon, whatever, and they just get rid, like, as they're trying to unify the canon, it is way easier to just, like, cut away an inconvenient detail like that so you don't have to deal with it, rather than trying to fully deal with it. Like, integrating the Brackern, like, integrating League of Legends main canon with Arcane is already not a thing that's gonna work. It's not gonna work. There's no fucking way it's gonna work. Like, I will bet you money on that. But trying to do it at the same time as trying to reckon with the Brackern as they were, with Skarner's old backstory, not gonna happen. Not in a million years. Like, the story of Hextech in Arcane cannot be unified with the story of Hextech as it existed while the Brackern were the source of Hex crystals. Right? And that's why they're retconning it. It has fucking nothing to do with Seraphine. Like, get your heads out of your asses.
It's a little terrifying, because we want to place these champions like in our lore, we want to elevate them even higher, but we also don't want to disrespect the people who love Skarner and the reasons why they love Skarner. And so now...
Yeah, and that's sort of the thing of like, I don't like that as a goal. That, I completely understand, like, this thing, we don't want to alienate, we don't want to, like, disrespect people who love Skarner, we don't want to, like, we want to keep the thing that they love about the champion from the beginning, and I don't think that's a good goal. I think the best reworks in League of Legends are stuff like Galio and Trundle, that, like, say, okay, the thing that it wasn't working, throw it out, start over from scratch, like, come up with a better fundamental concept for this character. And, like, I liked old Galio. I liked old Trundle. Like, I think there are holes in League of Legends that something like Trundle could fill, something like old Galio, like a Gargoyle champion, could fill, like, narratively and stuff. But Galio and Trundle, as they were, just objectively better than they were pre-rework. They are just objectively better characters, they're better integrated. And it's kind of the same thing with Skarner, is that the concept they've come up with post-rework, where he's integrated into Ishtal, he has this very clear narrative role in like the progression of that particular region, and the relationship, like, between, like, with Ishtal and its isolationism. That is just objectively better, because it has somewhere to go, right? It has some shit that it can do. Old Skarner's lore is this vestigial thing that was sort of hanging out in its own space, with a connection to Piltover and Zon, but not one that really works with what Skarner himself... Like, it's something that was retconned onto him much later, that I think was really interesting, a place that I would have loved for them to go and explore and commit to, but if they can't do that, and clearly they fucking can't, then post-rework is a much stronger character on every technical level, right? Like, it's a much more strongly integrated character on every technical level, like, who has somewhere to go, because Riot aren't quite as uncomfortable and scared of engaging with his story, right? So, like, it's better, and I think it's the healthier place to go, is one to say, no, we can't stymie, like, we can't define the creative process of what we're trying to do by... Well, what about the people who like the old version? Because the old version has to die. It has to go away. And the most boring reworks, the ones I like the least in League of Legends, are the ones where it's just, oh yeah, it's exactly the same thing, but in higher fidelity? Oh, okay. Like, why should I give a shit about that? Like, what's there to be... There's not that much there to be excited about, ultimately. Like, Akali is the best one of those, like, because they use it as an excuse to progress her in time, like, advance the story, move it somewhere new. But something like Kale, for example, is like, the fuck was the point of that? Like, that's just Kale in slightly higher definition. But now she takes armor off as she becomes more inhuman, which is my old bugbear about that. But anyway, let's hear the writer out.
As, like, you know, the oldest member of the Yuntal, Skarner is now one of the most important characters in Ishtal, which really elevates him to a new level, but it is still different than where he used to be.
But anyway, the point is, new Skarner is not at all like old Skarner. He just isn't. Sorry, he simply isn't. Like, and I'm sure this writer would disagree with me on that. That's fine. But no, he isn't. Like, old Skarner was this sad, vengeful, lonely, desperate, isolated, last of his kind creature roaming the world looking for the souls of his lost people. New Skarner is like a kaiju who is the Pope of Ishtal, and he has a huge community around him, and there are other Brackens that apparently still exist that he's somewhat in contact with, and he has like a purpose, he has a home, he has like it's a completely different character. Like, so it's like, which is why I think it's a mistake to try and hold on. Oh, we want to keep him as much the same. Like, we want to hold on to the things people loved about the old one. No, don't do that. Give them something new to love, which I think is what the rework has actually tried to do. And I think that's a better creative goal, ultimately. I think that leads to more interesting outcomes.
I hope that like current Skarner mains enjoy the new Skarner. He's awesome. I really hope like with his story they see his new importance in Ishtal and how integral he's become to the region, and how
again, yeah, sure, integral to the region and important to, but also you need to publish some fucking stories about that then. Like, you need to tell that story. Riot Games, the corporation company. You need to actually let your writers write some fucking stories about this and publish them then. Some comics, do what, like, fucking whatever. You have to do that. If you don't do that, then no, we will never see how integral he's become to the region or how integrated he is or how much he matters to it, because you motherfuckers keep refusing to tell us. So, you know, and again, that's not the writer's fault, but this is just Riot Games, the company corporation. Fucking give your writers some fucking publishing space to do some shit.
how he's now like a living piece of their history, and that they think that this new lore is worthy of the character that they're so dedicated to.
I hope it will be once you're allowed to publish it. Because that's the thing, is like, it's just Riot Games, the company, man. Like, the corporation, the fucking games industry ass EA corporation motherfuckers are the problem. Anyway, I have Skarner's biography here, so let's read it. Let's read what it actually says. And in order to do that, I have to swap over to another thing. There we go. Okay, let's see. Skarner, the primordial sovereign. All Ishtali grew up hearing the name Skarner, the ancient protector of Ishtal, the Brackern who shaped the earth itself and built the first arcologies. His visage is painted in reliefs and immortalized in the annals of Ishtal's history, a myth still honored and revered. That's one thing, by the way, about when you actually look at the concept art for Ishtal, Skarner is nowhere to be seen there in anything. Neither is Scorpion imagery, as far as I remember. Like, he's not there, because of course when they were making Ishtal they didn't know that that's what Skarner was going to end up being. But that's a thing that, like, also, hey, maybe give your concept artists a little time to go back and do that, then like integrate Skarner and Scorpions and Brackern into the imagery and the iconography of Ishtal itself. That would be cool if you did that, right? If you gave a shit. If you put aside some budget for that to happen, and also like to sort of do that to all of the regions to integrate the important champions that you've invented to their mythology and iconography, and like sort of show that visually. That would be good if you did that. Anyway, but deep beneath the cardinal arcology of Ishokan is the chamber where Skarner dwells. There he listens to the vibrations of the earth above him, listens and waits. Skarner's myth began millennia ago. Born to the Brackern clan Opalhin, he was the progeny of legendary broodmother Nixale. While the other Bracklings in his brood left the safety of Nixale's back, Skarner chose to linger, his uneasy curiosity driving him to study her power and wisdom. Oh, interesting. So that's interesting. Like, Skarner, from a very early age, shows his paranoia, right? Unease, curiosity. He's unwilling to leave a safe space where he feels protected, and so like, okay, I like that. Like, that's a good starting place for a character who's driven by like paranoia and a desperation to protect the safe nest that he has built. Observation soon evolved into ingenuity. Unlike his broodmate, Skarner honed the Bracken's innate control of Earth and perfected the art of reading underground vibrational patterns, allowing him to sense and decipher faraway movements. Okay. When Skarner was older, it was through these vibrations that he detected a dramatic shift in the continent, marked by the arrival of settlers from the east. Clan Opalian did not trust these newcomers, but Skarner's curiosity could not be suppressed. He needed to know what made them tick. He surveyed these Ishtali people. They were born, they toiled, they died, there 1 second and gone the next. However, through his observations, Skarner saw that they used what limited time they had to build, create, and invent. Their existence fascinated him until he discovered just how fragile they truly were. When a nearby rockslide threatened to destroy the burgeoning Ishtali settlement, Skarner, wanting to preserve the subjects of his observation, intervened. Emerging from the jungle, he towered over the people and used his physical strength and command of the earth to pulverize the rockslide before it could touch the village. As the dust cleared, the Ishtali gazed upon their savior in awestruck reverence and gratitude. I'd be pretty scared. Within Skarner, a protectiveness began to stir. These fragile beings could not survive without him. He no longer observed the Ishtali from afar, and as he became more involved with them, Skarner spent less time with his clan. The humans became his permanent project, and their nation his new home. The relationship he formed with the early Ishtali was one of exchange. The Ishtali shared their history and culture, and Skarner used his earthen prowess to help build the cardinal arcology of Ishaukan with the planet's lines of power connected. Oh, are we doing ley line shit? Okay, yeah. Just a little side note. If you ever hear some motherfucker talking about how the cities of the ancient Mayan people or like whatever some Meso or South American civilization, they were all connected to the ley lines of the earth. Bullshit. No, they weren't. Shut the fuck up. Ley lines are bullshit. There's no such thing. It is pseudoscientific nonsense, and it's not like they did not build their fucking civilizations based on some ancient mystical art of power lines connecting or whatever. I've seen too many people buy into that shit. Like, not in the sense of believing that ley lines are real, but believing that ancient peoples thought that ley lines were real and built their cities accordingly. They didn't. Shut the fuck up. This is like new age, like very recently invented white Western bullshit, and it's not true. It's ancient aliens bullshit. But Skarner's greatest contribution was as a founding member of the civilization's ruling caste. Combining Ishtal's scientific mindset with the collectivist culture of the Brackern, the Yuntal's goal was to lead its people into a bright future. And so it was through Skarner's protection that Ishtal flourished. Outside of Ishtal, the Shuriman Empire extended its reach, and Skarner watched as Ascendant stormed the continent. His belief in the resourcefulness of mortals was shattered as he saw the darker side of humanity, corruption, driven by a lust for power. Oh, I mean, to be fair, in the League of Legends universe, that's not a human thing. That's an everywhere thing. Skarner could sense the building tension in Shurima. He was vocal about his distrust, but when the Shuriman Empire invited Ishtal to form an alliance, the Yuntal eagerly accepted. With the Acathian rebellion, he was vindicated, but at the cost of many lives. By the time of the Shuriman Empire's collapse, and Ishtal regained its independence, Skarner had nothing but disgust left for the world outside their jungle, a wasteland of pain and suffering. A wasteland made even worse by the Rune Wars. Ah, very good. Witnessing such destruction, Skarner finally convinced the Yuntal to withdraw from the world, shielding their lands with magic and lies to hide themselves away. But his faith in the Yuntal was shaken. Where they had failed to keep the Ishtali safe, Skarner would not. Now knowing only he could protect Ishtal, Skarner constructed himself an underground chamber below Ishaukan, designed to amplify the vibrational threads across the continent. Every thrum spoke of another threat to Ishtal's safety, but he could also hear the steady noise of Ishtal above him, proof that through his sovereignty, the city continued to survive. There he listened and waited. Deep beneath the dark earth, his paranoia festered until, over time, vigilance gave way to seclusion, and he ceased leaving his chamber altogether. To the Ishtali above ground, Skarner slowly faded from memory into myth, his presence known only by the Yuntal, who traveled underground to confer with him about Ishtal's future. Now, as new generations of elemental masters joined the Yuntal, discussions have begun about the possibility of rejoining the world once more. Skarner hears these whispers, which spur his paranoia, as he knows opening the door will invite pain, suffering, and death like it did generations ago. The only one Skarner can trust is himself, and he'll do anything it takes to protect Ishtal and his people, even if that means become the root of their destruction himself. Yeah. And that's where the horror is, right? Like, the horror is in this thing of, like, him being so traumatized and so alone with his trauma for so long without ever reaching out to anyone, trusting anyone, without reaching out to his people, even. That's... like, that it just becomes his personality, right? Like, that it sort of takes over his thoughts and his soul. And where that story could go in meaningful ways is, like, it instantly puts him in a collision course with Kiana, who's desperate to expand. Like, who sees expansion of Ishtali power as, like, key to her accession and her key to her proving herself as, like, the powerful elemental mage that she knows that she is and how she's better than everyone. That's, like, Kiana's thing. it brings him into conflict with Malphite, because like Malphite is someone who travels the world and sees the world and who has seen so many things and has so many experiences to share about the good things that are out there, the things that are worth protecting, right? Malphite's argument would be, well, we should extend our protection. Like, we can protect the world, we can make things better, we can help these people. Like, he travels underground all the time, smashing, like, void portals and keeping mortals safe from them. So, like, that brings him into ideological conflict with Malphite. And with Melio, like, Melio also cares mostly about protecting his home, right? Like, that's Melio's main thing, is that he wants to protect his family, he wants to protect his people, he wants to do right by them, right? Like, he wants to build a better world for them. And he comes into conflict with Skarner because, well, in order to do that, maybe you shouldn't be ruled by, like, a paranoid sort of, like, sort of, like, mentally ill, like, I guess he is, like, paranoid, like, terrified giant kaiju scorpion who thinks that, like, he alone has the power and the right to control his entire environment in order to alleviate his fear, which, like, you know, maybe, like, Melio would understand that that's bad, that that's a bad way to live, and, like, he would probably, as a person, try to reach out to Skarner and be like, hey dude, it's not so bad, come on, like, I'm the spark of hope, and I'm a cheerful little Disney protagonist, and I'm here to show you that things are much better outside. Won't you, like, do you want to build a snowman, right? And Skarner probably wouldn't respond very well to that, honestly. So there's places that his story can go, right? Like, you can explore his mental illness, right? Like, again, I don't want to diagnose him with anything specific, because that's not how it works with fictional characters, but, like, he seems to have, like, a severe problem of, like, mental illness that he's not talking to anyone about, that he's not getting any help with, because he doesn't feel like anyone else can help him, because it's his job to help everyone else. It's his job to protect everyone else, and I'm not the one who gets protected or helped ever, right? There are places to go to explore that, but again, that requires Rito Games to actually let the writers do any of that, which, as I've explained at excruciating length, probably a much more substantial length than I should have, is not the kind of thing that they're likely to do. Which, you know, that's sad. Anyway, I don't mind the new Skarner lore in general. Like, again, I think there are good pieces there to build with. It's just, I mourn the loss of what was a much more interesting concept once upon a time that I know Riot would never fully engage with, so, like, probably for the best that it's gone. I just don't have any faith that Riot will let the writers execute on any of these ambitions. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But I don't think I will be. Anyway, bye.